Here we are once again, my brothers and sisters. I want to welcome you to another Living Hope Today study. Thank you for being with me this morning, and we find ourselves in Judges chapter 8. Wow. Well, we've seen this cycle in Judges where they fall into idolatry, they suffer intensely, God raises up a judge or a mighty leader, delivers them from the people that have been oppressing them, and then they fall back into idolatry. That's been the cycle. Okay, well, watch what happens in chapter 8. If you remember, Gideon, at the Lord's command, has just taken 300 guys and wiped out this huge number of Midianite warriors. God actually fought the battle. God gets the victory. And now, chapter 8 is kind of like the aftermath. Let me show you. So here we are in 8:1. Now the Ephraimites, remember Ephraim is a son of Joseph, right? The Ephraimites, they asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us like this?" Wait a minute. What did Gideon do to these guys? "Why didn't you call us when you went to fight Midian?" And they criticized him sharply. I have to tell you that Gideon's a lot nicer than me. I mean, really, didn't God just tell them, "I don't want to go into battle with a bunch of guys because you're going to take the credit for the victory. Let's whittle these guys down till there's just a few people," right? I mean, Gideon could have explained all that, but what does he say? He answered them, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Let me butter you guys up. Aren't the gleanings of Ephraim's grapes better than the full grape harvest of Abiezer?" That's where Gideon's from. In other words, you guys are great. Well, I would have said, look, you guys need to remember something. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men for me to deliver Midian into their hands in order that Israel may not boast against me that her own strength has saved her. God didn't call you guys to come to battle because God didn't want everybody involved. He got us down to 300 guys. God won the battle himself. Gideon lets all that go, butters them up, and then the story moves forward. "God gave Oreb and Zeb, the Midianite leaders, into your hands. What was I able to do compared to you?" And at this, their resentment against him subsided. Have you ever heard that phrase, "no good deed goes unpunished"? Well, here these people are all upset with Gideon when he's just doing what God told him to do. All right, verse 4, Gideon and his 300 men, exhausted, yet keeping up the pursuit, came to the Jordan and crossed it. So what's happening here? It's time to make sure all the Midianite warriors that have plagued Israel for so long are completely wiped out. So now they're going on to the east side of the Jordan to pursue these guys that are fleeing because of what the Lord has done. He said to the men of Sukkoth, "Hey, give my troops some bread. They're worn out, and I'm still pursuing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian. All right, can you just help us a little bit, give us something to eat?" But the officials of Sukkoth said, "Do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your troops?" Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're afraid that if Gideon can't eliminate these two kings of Midian, that those guys will come back and attack them for helping Gideon. We're not really told. All we're told for sure is the officials of Sukkoth say no way, we're not giving you any bread. You're on your own. Well, so then Gideon replied, "Well, just for that, when the Lord has given Zebah and Zalmunna into my hand, I'm coming back." See what he says? "I will tear your flesh with desert thorns and briars." This was a common torture in the ancient world where they would drag you over these terribly rigid, sharp things with thorns and briars and just rip you up. Gideon's saying, that's going to happen to you because you didn't help me. All right, well, chapter 2 here, from there he went to Peniel, and he made the same request of them. Again, these Midianite warriors must have been so feared because nobody's going to help Gideon. Nobody. They answered the same as the men of Sukkoth had. We're not going to help you. We're not going to give you anything to eat. So he said to the men of Peniel, when I return in triumph, I will tear down this tower. That was apparently a tower in their city. Okay. So now Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor. Yeah, Karkor. Now, we're going to look at that in a minute. I just want you to see how far they've traveled to pursue the Midianites. All right, these two Midianite kings are in Karkor with a force of about 15,000 men, all that were left of the armies of the eastern peoples. In other words, they've gone from this vast army down to 15,000 guys. And it says here, 120,000 swordsmen had fallen. So they're down to 15,000 guys, but God has eliminated 120,000 of these Midianite warriors. And just to show you how far south I can't even say it, how far south Karkor is, it's way down here. It's almost to the Sea of Aqaba. If you remember when the Israelites were coming out of Egypt, they came up through here. You see the Dead Sea up there in the middle, and then northern Israel, and pay attention at the top there. You see that Ophrah town way up there. We'll get to that town in a minute, but just put it in your mind. It's up by the Sea of Galilee. But look how far Gideon's gone to go after these guys. He's way down south, attacking the Midianites, eliminating the problem. Gideon went up by the route of the nomads east of Nobah and Gogbaha and fell upon the unsuspecting army. These guys must have thought they were clearly out of range because they were so far away from where they had been oppressing the Israelites. Zebah and Zalmunna, the two kings of Midian, fled. Okay, so them and their 15,000 guys are running from Gideon and his 300 guys. They fled, but he pursued them, he captured them, and he routed their entire army. So again, God uses 300 guys to wipe out 15,000 guys, and these kings are so afraid of Israel, they're running to stay away from Gideon and his 300 guys. Gideon, son of Joash, then returned from the battle by the pass of Heres. He caught a young man of Sukkoth. Now remember, this was the place where those leaders would not even give him bread. Well, Gideon finds a guy that's from there, and he questions him. And the young man wrote down for him the names of the 77 officials of Sukkoth, the elders of the town. I want to know who these leaders were that wouldn't even give us a piece of bread. Then Gideon came and said to the men of Sukkoth, here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you taunted me by saying, do you already have the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna in your possession? Why should we give bread to your exhausted men? So in other words, now Gideon's showing up with the guys that he has conquered, these kings that apparently Sukkoth was afraid of. He took the elders of the town, those 77 guys, and taught the men of Sukkoth a lesson by punishing them with desert thorns and briars. He rakes them over there, causes them to shred, right? Gideon says, look, let me help you remember who I am while you're afraid of these other guys. He also pulled down the tower of Peniel, so he went back to that place and settled the score there too. He killed the men of the town. I mean, Gideon has turned into this lion. He used to be a guy that was kind of, I don't want to get involved, if you recall. And now he's a guy that like, hey, you're going to defy me? You better be careful because I'm going to wipe you out. Well, and then look what he does to these kings of Midian. Then he asked Zebah and Zalmunna, what kind of men did you kill at Tabor? Okay, so these guys have killed a bunch of Israelites, right? And they answer him, well, we killed men like you. They answered, each one with the bearing of a prince. And then Gideon reveals this. He replies, those were my brothers, the sons of my own mother. As surely as the Lord lives, if you had spared their lives, I would not kill you." And turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, "Kill them." But Jether did not draw his sword because he was only a boy and he was afraid. "Dad, I'm not killing these kings. I don't want to kill anybody." Right? He's not a warrior yet. Now, this is a little ironic. Verse 21. So these two kings of Midianite kings, Zebah and Zalmunna, they say what? "Well, come do it yourself." In other words, instead of pleading for their lives, they're saying, "Hey, if your kid's not going to kill us, why don't you come over here and kill us yourself?" As is the man, so is his strength. So Gideon stepped forward and killed them and took their ornaments off of their camels' necks. So now we're talking about plunder. The Israelites said to Gideon, "Hey, we want you to rule over us. You're a great judge. You've saved us from the Midianites. You, your son, your grandson, hey, let's have a few generations of Gideon as our ruler because you saved us out of the hand of Midian. You have delivered us." This is the part of the cycle where God shows his strength to keep his people out of these terrible situations. But Gideon told them, "I'm not going to rule over you, nor will my son rule over you." Why not? Because the Lord's going to rule over you. Gideon has the sense to understand where his strength has come from, and he tells them, "God's your king, not me." And he said, "I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from your share of the plunder." It was the custom of the Ishmaelites to wear gold earrings. All right, so I don't really know if I understand this completely, but somehow Gideon's interested in some plunder. He wants some gold. What's he going to do with that? Well, they answered, "Look, we'll be glad to give them." So they spread out a garment, and each man threw a ring from his plunder onto it. So the weight of the gold rings he asked for came to 1,700 shekels, not counting the ornaments, the pendants, and the purple garments worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains that were on their camels' necks. So we're talking about great value here. As we get to the end of chapter 8, what does Gideon do with all this stuff? Well, Gideon made the gold into an ephod. Now, do you remember? An ephod was like the priestly garment that Aaron wore back in the tabernacle days, right? Gideon manufactures, we assume, it's some kind of garment. It's not always, if you look through scripture, that the priest is the one wearing the ephod. Sometimes a leader wears an ephod. Okay, so he manufactures this ephod out of all this gold, and he puts it in Ophrah. Remember, that was that town way up north by the Sea of Galilee? It was his town. That's where he's from. Okay. Can you believe this? All Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there. They're worshiping this priestly garment, this garment made with gold. We're going to bow down before it? Are you serious? That's what happened. In fact, it says, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. That's about all the commentary we get on it. Now we get the summation. Thus Midian was subdued before the Israelites and did not raise its head again. During Gideon's lifetime, the land enjoyed peace for 40 years. All right. Now, a few more things to wrap up at the end of this chapter. Jerubbaal, remember that was Gideon's name they gave him, son of Joash, went back home to live. So he goes back to Ophrah. And he had 70 sons of his own, for he had many wives. So Gideon is a very busy guy. 70 sons. His concubine, who lived in Shechem, also bore him a son, whom he named Abimelech. Hold on to that name. We're going to learn more about that guy pretty soon. Abimelech. Gideon, son of Joash, died at a good old age. He was buried in the tomb of his father Joash in Ophrah of the Abizarites. Help me, God. No sooner had Gideon died. Look at 33. No sooner had Gideon died than the Israelites again prostituted themselves to the Baals. They set up Baal-berith as their god. And they did not remember the Lord their God, who had rescued them from the hands of all their enemies on every side. They did not remember him. They also failed to show kindness to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, for all the good things he had done for them. So now they're not just worshiping the false gods again. They don't even honor Gideon for all the things he had done. Well, before we leave today, I'm just going to take you back to this one pattern we've seen. You remember God in chapter 2 says, I will never break my covenant with you. They turn to idolatry, and Aram oppresses them for 8 years. Othniel delivers them. They have 40 years of peace. They turn to idolatry again. Moab oppresses them for 18 years. Ehud is used by God as a judge to deliver them. They have 80 years of peace. They turn to idolatry, right? Sisera is the captain or the leader of the army. The Canaanite, they oppress the Israelites for 20 years. Deborah is raised up as a judge, delivers them through God's power. They have 40 years of peace. And now we see the cycle again, idolatry. The Midianites gain power over Israel. They oppress them brutally for 7 years. Gideon raises up and delivers them through God's power, and they have 40 years of peace. So as we look at the chart so far, there's been 53 years of oppression. There's been 200 years of peace. And that's where we're going to leave it today. God is working out his plan, but he's certainly not getting any assistance from the people that belong to him. They continue to leave him at the drop of a hat to worship false gods. We need to live by the truth. We need to hold on to the truth. We cannot let our culture take our hearts and take our minds. We have to focus on God's word. We'll pick it up there next time, church. God bless you. Serve him well today.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.